Here's a quick history lesson for those of you who weren't around back in the 1970s. President Nixon resigned after the Watergate scandal, and when the next election came around, people wanted a change. They wanted someone nice. They wanted someone honest. They wanted an outsider. And the nicest, most honest outsider anyone could find was a peanut farmer from Georgia named Jimmy Carter. What should have come as a surprise to no one was that Mr. Carter's peanut farming skills didn't translate very well into governing the most powerful nation in history skills. Mr. Carter lost the next election, and he moved on to trying to make the world a better place. Unfortunately, his good intentions were often marred by his complete ignorance of human nature. Like certain other American presidents, Mr. Carter simply has no clue how the world works. And this past weekend, his cluelessness led him to promote not only Islam, but also the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, an organization with ties to both the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. He even encouraged people to give money to ISNA.
I want to urge you to comply with the request to give generously to the Islamic Society of North America.
But there's a deeper issue here. Mr. Carter sees problems in the world, and he understands that we need to do something about these problems. For instance, he recognizes human rights abuses against women.
The last 3 years, we've concentrated on the same subject that I'll discuss more definitively this afternoon, and that is the abuse and deprivation of the rights of women and girls on earth. This is one of the worst human rights issues that are not being addressed on earth.
But Mr. Carter just can't pinpoint the main source of global human rights abuses against women when it should be obvious. Watch how easy this is to figure out. In 2009, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development released a report on gender equality and social institutions. They rated countries around the world based on their level of discrimination against women. Here's a map of their findings. Red indicates an elevated level of discrimination against women. Dark red indicates a high level of discrimination against women. Notice that the closer you get to the Middle East and Northern Africa, the greater the discrimination against women. Let's look at the worst 12, the 12 countries with the highest levels of discrimination against women. The 12 worst places in the world to be a woman as of 2009 were Libya, United Arab Emirates, Iraq, Pakistan, Iran, India, Chad, Yemen, Mali, Sierra Leone, Afghanistan, and Sudan. With the lone exception of India, these are all Muslim-majority countries. 11 of the 12 worst places in the world to be a woman are Muslim-majority countries. That should give us some idea of what the problem might be. But how does Mr. Carter propose to solve this human rights problem?
And I hope that all of you will use the principles of Allah and our God to bring peace and justice to all. Thank you very much.
The principles of Allah will bring peace and justice to women who are suffering. Well, what are the principles of Allah, Mr. Carter? According to Surah 2, verse 282 of the Quran, the testimony of a woman is worth half the testimony of a man. Muhammad explains why in Sahih al-Bukhari 2658. The Prophet said, "Isn't the witness of a woman equal to half of that of a man?" The women said, "Yes." He said, "This is because of the deficiency of a woman's mind." So the testimony of women is unreliable because women are stupid. Muhammad also claims that women are morally deficient. In Sahih al-Bukhari 1052, Muhammad says that most of the inhabitants of hell are women. He tells us why in Sahih Muslim 142. He said, "O womenfolk, you should give charity and ask much forgiveness, for I saw you in bulk amongst the dwellers of hell." A wise lady among them said, "Why is it, Messenger of Allah, that our folk is in bulk in hell?" Upon this, the Holy Prophet observed, "You curse too much and are ungrateful to your spouses. I have seen none lacking in common sense and failing in religion, but at the same time robbing the wisdom of the wise besides you." Since women are intellectually and morally inferior to men, they sometimes need to be disciplined. Allah tells Muslim men how to discipline their wives in Surah 4, verse 34 of the Quran. Men are in charge of women, because Allah hath made the one of them to excel the other, and because they spend of their property for the support of women. So good women are the obedient, guarding in secret what Allah hath guarded. As for those from whom ye fear rebellion, admonish them and banish them to beds apart and scourge them. Then, if they obey you, seek not a way against them. Muhammad had a child bride named Aisha, whom he had sex with when she was only 9 years old, setting an example for all future generations of Muslims. In Sahih al-Bukhari 5825, Aisha sees a woman whose Muslim husband had beaten her so severely her skin turned green. Aisha takes the woman to Muhammad and says, "I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing women. Look, her skin is greener than her clothes." Muhammad, of course, champion of women's rights that he was, rebukes the woman for being a bad wife and lets the husband go off without so much as a warning. Think about this. Aisha, the mother of the faithful, living in the Muslim community under the leadership of Muhammad himself, says that Muslim women were being treated worse than pagan women. Why were Muslim women being treated so horribly? Because the principles of Allah command it. Here we are nearly 14 centuries later, and if Aisha were here, she could still look around and say, "I have not seen any woman suffering as much as the believing women." And what's the solution to this endless cycle of misery, according to former President of the United States, Jimmy Carter? We need the principles of Allah, otherwise known as Sharia. That'll save women, just like it's done never. I think I'm going to go become a peanut farmer and talk to peanuts, because peanuts have a better chance of understanding Islam than our leaders.